Hello, fair friends. Good morning, or evening, or night. Time is irrelevant. The fickle thing. The chrono battle. But yes. Happy, almost going to be new moon. Um, all of these suspended outside of time and space. So, I thought how appropriate, what an appropriate time to get this out there before I am suspended in time and space and it stops altogether. Um, and so I don't have to worry about it. Um, but yes, as I am now, comfier than ever. And showing face in respect to Aries, because I'm just hella moisturized, because I've got to be up early. Um, but new moon, solar eclipse. Um, Partial solar eclipse, and all in Aries, on top of multiple retrogrades and a little planetary clusterfuck, um, and some incoming retrogrades that will be uh, similar in a similar sign and similar shenanigans. Um, there's a lot going on in like one area. Um, a lot of intensity for sure. And Aries very much rules, physically your head, your presence, your identity, but also your mental capacity and mentality, where your head is at. The idea of home, what is home to you? Where are you safe? And if anything, I think home is where your head is at. And that is not just my idea. I think yogis or bodhisattvas that have taught meditation, or monks that have taught meditation, um, a common theme I've noticed is this place that you go to, um, or people have visions or what have you in certain states, and then wonder what this place is, um, and that is exactly that, our unfamiliarity with our internal home. I actually have a theory that is exactly why the metaverse has you construct this sort of home room, because that is a very key point in meditation. Um, and being able to go into that space, and if they can create it, then in fact we will lose touch with being able to create it on our own. Um, so the fun way is that science and meditation actually overlap, but also just the codexes of memories in general. And there we are again in mental capacity, um, and even as I find the more I'm getting like into it, the more like foggy and fuzzy that I get. Um, and I do tap into it collectively. So if you resonate, party on while all out here in that state. Um, on top of your mental capacity, Aries is also a lot of energy intensity. I do think with all of this being in Aries, but also in with a lot of Pisces energies carrying over, Neptune will be going retrograde later, and that will carry in some Pisces energy as well, or in general water energy. And we have two very clashing, temperamental and domineering elements. um, I think there's a finesse to what goes on with your fire and your water, though. And something I've learned is, rather than it canceling out or necessarily battling each other, the two do comprise and compose something new altogether. Oh, wow. All kinds of stuff going on. What's up? Haha. From North Korea. What's up? What's up? What's up? Um, so I think beyond that intensity, blah, 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 finding the finesse, hot and cold. They don't necessarily cancel each other out like you would think water puts out fire or what have you. Um, but it's a chemical reaction, and chemical fires get bigger in those contexts. And so we have to establish a new output for it, and that's where, you know, fire and water gives you boiling water, so you can make tea, so you can make ramen. It gives you all these different states of composition. This is also why science has the um, ability to construct matter the way that it does. Um, Beyond all of this intensity and, you know, what is or what was, and mental capacity, I do think that is more so what we are connected to. It's not just like energy and surge and current. It's like a surge in the current, and then what do we do in those contexts? We trace the cord back, and we find that particular source outlet and relieve it, or whatever it is that we need to do, in a literal sense, but also in a metaphorical and metaphysical sense. So when things are very triggering, or what have you, which even the context of trigger, this is a clash of realities. Um, while there is some recognition of notable Mandela effects, or changes in timelines, I do think even if people don't necessarily buy that or believe that, uh, corporations do just by our memory. Like, that's a lot of it. Some corporation bought out another corporation. They changed the logo because now it's under new management, and they just put it out there and never said anything about it and gaslit us all to hell. So even if you don't buy the woo woo of it, um, that is a very real explanation for it. Um, in which we you know, follow the source, we follow the money, we follow the trail, we follow the cord, we follow the current or the currency. Um, Trace the cord, but even in context of yourself. Venus and Mercury have been retrograde. How has that been treating you? Um, um, that line of connection and communication is also, interestingly, between Makemake and Eris, and I think that is a very clear sight that, thankfully, and hopefully not just my algorithm, I do see, um, that in the face of all of these changes, in the face of a new kind of corporatization, there are, in fact, people that are more fiery about environmental protection. There are, in fact, more people that are redefining community and really trying to establish that. There are, in fact, more people that are leading into a more sustainable way of being, in some way, shape, or form. In some way, shape, or form. There's a mass exodus and an entry into something else entirely. Um, but I think, while that is a revolutionary and sustainable thought, uh, do your wounds move you, or do you move through them? Because I think that is a very clean line of energy, a very clean line, clear line for some people, but there's a lot of fog in the space around it, that I think, again, back to this intensity, people are taking as clashing elements, rather than the chemical compositions in growing. Da, 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 da. Let's see, let's see. Oh God, all of this retrograde energy in Chiron. And that is also very much direct line, clean line, like laser sight, but also like hot burning because it's so condensed. Um, in which case, sometimes our emotions or our memories will direct us rather than us be the director. Or the various ways in which we are led by our wounds, and move through or move with our trauma in mind, or mindlessly with trauma, rather than having moved through it or stepped beyond it, or what have you. The ways in which honestly, that the abuse still becomes the abuser, because they've failed to look at the cycle and notice. But That is not everybody. Again, we've got a clear line of sight that I think is, in fact, a very loving one. And we just need a few people to tap into it and to be the ones in the driver's seat of their memory. Um, as these timelines shift in this cluster fuck, Mercury, Venus, Neptune, charging the moon in the eclipse. Um, Neptune will eventually retrograde in Aries as well, and I believe in Pisces too. But for now, it cusps and dances on this line. Um, and so we have these two ultra powerful elements at odds or conspiring. Um, or conspiring something new altogether, which is perhaps a new scientific development of matter. Who knows? Um, New information altogether, a new paradigm. Um, but again, I think that's especially because it's Neptune, the ways in which we trace back memory and experience to it rules our dreams. It rules a lot of inner and deeper thoughts. I think a lot of subconscious stuff, which is kind of again dreams. So especially when it goes retrograde, will that mean that we're kind of lost in sleep paralysis or daydreaming or again really foggy? And even people on here real distracted and like, why bother being here for the wrong reasons? That's unnecessary. Um, uh, but in that context, it, I think has a lot to do with the ways our dreams or the way our rest or the way our subconscious or the way our past or the way our past trauma or the way just our memories of our past or the way past lives influence. Um, and unbeknownst to us sometimes. Um, I think dreams are as real, if not more so, than this time, this presence. And I think our past lives and those timelines very much overlay and intertwine and interact. And sometimes the days where we're like, I don't know, man, I'm just not feeling myself, or feeling very depressed out of nowhere, feeling ecstatic and wonderful and just really grateful and beautiful out of nowhere, seemingly. Um, or not, not really being able to find a reason for it. Not that we necessarily need one, but I do think it is because of influences, emotional memory influences that develop in other timelines, um, where another version of you is going through something, and so you do feel. This is similarly to the way twins experience pain or experience cognitive thought, um, despite distance and despite separation. We very much have that within various elements of ourselves. And there are people that are erratic and that are violent and that are aggressive because there's a version of themselves that is still very present in their cellular memory, but that they have not been able to cognitively tap into. And sometimes that's the time that you, uh, you know, uh, blacked out that your dad's not proud of you, um, or something worse, um, or absolutely like a different experience on a different timeline. Um, and so we trace those chords back. We find the source of that current so that we can address it and connect it and allow it to be untangled, or so we can disconnect it because it is not you or it is not a part of you. I do think we're surrounded by input that is also intangible and outside of us and foreign to us. I've said before, we're not the only ones in our dreams. There's companies that have or are working on patents and technology to be able to advertise in our dreams. So we have to be able to understand when it is you and when it is not. And that is, I think, a huge part of the conception of America and many other countries in its geometric framework, is to be the driver in our memories. That's why history has been written the way that it is, and we ultimately do the same to ourselves. So, what is the matter? Not in a negative context, matter like the particle. What is the matter? Do you remember? Do you remember why? Do you remember why or when you are the way you are and what that means? What a therapy setting would, use lateral eye movement therapy for a PTSD sparking instance or childhood trauma situations is very much the same thing, just a shorter timeline. Um, and so the same practices ultimately can be used, or I think can be very interwoven. And the ways we can see it, microscopically versus macroscopically. The therapist will take you back to 5-year-old you, or maybe that's too young. We'll take you back to like 12-year-old you. Another person will take you back to 12 lifetimes ago you. Uh, the distance is irrelevant. I love that you fell out, but you'll come back if we need you. So, I'm gonna pull some cards, so that we can perhaps find a piece of our memory this new moon and incoming eclipse. This new eclipse and incoming new moon. And understand the ways in which it will influence. Da, 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 da. Okay. If you would like to be available for it. And generally, you should pay attention to your breath, but take 3 deep breaths. And exhale. Breath in. And exhale. Deep breath in. And exhale. Oof. Very palpable, very hot. Interesting. Interesting. Yikes. Queen of Spades, Jack of Spades, Queen of Hearts, Two of Hearts. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Again, a lot of mental space and emotional space. There's a lot of separation. Okay, so this Queen of Spades energy is very much knowledgeable, very much like well written, very much very skilled in what they do. Have all of the tools that they need, if you will. But this Jack of Spades Is it even like it's a step beyond, like, don't take yourself too seriously. It's and I know I've said this before, it's a slippery slope, and a fine line from humbleness to insecurity and confidence to obtuse ego. Um, Betraying yourself constantly also in negating or doubting yourself is a form of ego. Um, a form of like putrefied or like toxic ego. Like self-loathing is a narcissism. I want to say, or maybe that's not the word for it. But something along those lines. It's a self obsession, a self absorption, either way, and it becomes very murky and very trapping rather than relieving or growing. I want this to be more like moss than swamp, um, because swamp will hold you down, and moss it's not a heavy thing. It's moist and damp, but it's actually very light because it sort of dissipates very easily. And that's maybe where this queen has held on to too much memory in some contexts, um, or held on to memory in a way that it betrays itself. Um, the ways in which it's all too common to stay up tossing and turning thinking about 6 years ago and you said one wrong thing, um and again a step beyond taking yourself too seriously. um that's also sort of driving yourself into the ground, and not that it's insignificant, but that you'd be surprised how much people are busy doing the same thing about themselves, so they're not thinking about you doing the thing. uh and it goes on and it goes on. It's sort of this rusty, squeaky hamster wheel, um, of you sort of punking yourself, or treating yourself in jest. Um, this is also the romance of the clown idea, I think, to some degree, or at least reminds me of a sad clown that I painted once, because he just tries so hard, and still just doesn't feel good enough. For these being very pink, what a it doesn't feel calm, but it can be. That's also the point. It exists in that. It's just the context. Um, it exists in that, in this, and it doesn't have to be that. I feel like if this Jack of Spades was upright, then it would very much be the confidence with which to, continue just rolling off the tongue and to not draw attention to missteps, or it's the actor that can uh, you know make up a line when they don't remember one, or the dancer that can fall and make it look like it was on purpose, um, or the person who can misspeak and be like, shit, you're right, I didn't know. um, that is a level of humble also, where again this Queen of Spades uh, ought not take themselves too seriously, because there is more to learn. And that's honestly one of my favorite things about anybody that I do admire, and something that I notice often in people that I admire, is they are very knowledgeable about whatever it is and then some, and also very humble, and that is both personally and professionally. And when those two things are true, oftentimes it is a very successful and safe person to be around. Um, and I say successful and safe because I do uh, equate those things. Um, I feel like they hold hands more so than they are each other. Um, which is also what this Two of Hearts is, the sentiment of um oh, and especially with this like cool burnt orange, it's very much a hopefulness, but not so much a romance. Um, it's making new friends, not making new lovers. Um, but also like platonic growth and again these humble sort of wholesome kind of ideas. Um, which is funny because I think more often than not, people would say Two of Hearts is you're gonna meet somebody new, you're gonna blah 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 blah. Um, but I hope you do meet somebody new, and I hope it's a version of you that you forgot about and remembered, or uh, reignited, regardless of the distance of that memory. You'd be surprised how much understanding even simple things from when you were a child and how they've influenced you, or past lives and how it influences you now. I promise you, it helps put pieces together, very much so. Um, and that's the converse of this swampy green Queen of Hearts. Um, that's also still just a beautiful, peaceful olive and all of these things. But again, the context, right? Um, and I think even with the swampy, mossy, we are looking at different elements. We are looking at characteristics of both of those things as like vibrant ecosystems, um, and that is vibrant and thriving ecosystems, and that is very much literally and metaphorically what we want to see more of in the world outside, but also very much what goes on in here. Again, with all of our memories, the things that we try to burn down, the parts of ourselves that we try to burn down or bury, um, do not, and in fact, poison us, and the body holds on to that information and eventually revolts. um, but if, like a vibrant and giving ecosystem, um, all of those things are giving and taking with some other aspect, and it's understood, there's mutual growth. um, these are the ways in which your ego still serves you and your subconscious still serves you, rather than the ways in which we demonize, um, or reject one face or another of ourselves. And sometimes that is even the simple things that we guilt or shame ourselves into ever having been hurt by. Um, which, again, you'd be surprised how much something so simple in childhood could have impacted or influenced simple things about the way we move today. Okay, but we move. How do we move? Okay. We move, but how do we move? Yeah. Um, okay, we're gonna take this slowly. I love this. I don't even need. Um, One thing in impacting your memory, or in dealing with your memory, um, again, we're dealing with head space, thought space, mental capacity, and emotional space. And very big movements, and then very small movements and fricative nature. It's very much jumping octaves, or and also like trilling notes, um, but all at the same time, which is coexisting again. That's why I'm thinking like timelines and other aspects, like things that happen simultaneously within ourselves. Um, and that's even, PTSD triggers, and the way that they manifest these. It's an ecosystem that is communicating and that perspires in one way or another. Um, and we have to follow those triggers to where they're connected to in our heart so that we can understand more clearly what that energy surge is, um, in a very literal but also metaphorical and metaphysical way. Um, whether that be going to a therapist, doing trauma regression therapy, lateral eye movement therapy, whether that be meditation about childhood regression or past life regressions, or seeing somebody about it. 100%. I've taken myself there. I can take you there. Um, but so I asked also, how do we move? How do we move? That's all fine and well, but how do we move? Um, Four of Diamonds and the Ten of Clubs. And that's very much sharing and communicating that knowledge, whether that just be taking an idea and putting it to paper, or taking that idea on paper and putting it to, you know, put in it to pavement, or whether that be reflecting on an idea with somebody, with a person, with a friend, validating that idea, that theory. This is also why people go to therapy, not to validate a theory necessarily, uh, but to fucking validate something with somebody, Um, Talk therapy does not necessarily somatically move you in and out of body or timeline, though. That is a breath thing. Um, Specifically, breathing through your nose versus breathing through your mouth. Um, Breathing through your nose will put you back in your body. Breathing through your mouth will pull you out of your body or expel from your body. It's the difference between an invocation or evocation for my black magic nerds, um, or I guess just magic nerds. Um, and be very conscious of that. Um, I've definitely dabbled in a lot of meditation things, and have noticed not every situation grounds you in your breath and in your body, after the fact, uh, or yoga classes or what have you. And so we can feel very erratic and very wired and very like sort of spacey, or not necessarily present or aware of ourselves, and lack a kinesthesiological sense. Um, but there's a reason for that. Humans mostly breathe through their nose, and I mean breathe through their mouth, unfortunately. Um, and so uh, it's no wonder that we have so much disillusionment and disembodiment, and what's the other thing that people do? Dissociation. That was on the tip of my tongue. And so this is kind of like, rather than dissociate, um, finding solidity somewhere, rather than spiraling, finding finding grounding. And the same can be said for like panic attacks. Rather than like I mean, and sometimes we don't have control, um, and we faint or what have you. Um, but uh, when you still have capacity for it, often they'll say, look for things you know, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can smell, whatever, because it does start to validate reality in one sense or another. You start to find agreement or not validation, agreement or not camaraderie, corroboration, corroboration with theories, or corroboration within realities. On a molecular level, this is also what they say is reality. It's all of these particles are just moving around until one of us or two of us uh, acknowledges that one thing may in fact be in one place. And then the particle is being witnessed by multiple things, and so it feels pressured to do it or something, because they do behave differently when they're being watched. Don't we all, to some degree? Um, this Ten of Wands is very much facilitating space, facilitating space. It makes me think of pillars, um, which also makes me think sweat lodge, or conspiring circle, Stonehenge, those shapes in general, um, gazing toward Sirius, gazing toward equilibrium, what I think is the Earth's cellular membrane, which is why ancestral cultures worshipped it, because it was a place where energy can go within and without. Same thing in a cell. Um, but this 10 is, it's like, it's blessings, like, and when, what do we do when we build these spaces? You bless the earth, you bless the whole, like from the ground up. It's done with intention, and it's done with so much love from the ground up that it grows and continues to compound on itself with the smallest of gestures. And that's very much what I'm picking up here. They're very royal. They're very um, opaque, very royal, very opaque, very tangible, for those reasons. Uh, Especially versus all of these like weird kind of pastels, in mental energy and emotional energy prior. Um, and so with that, regardless of what kind of space this Ten of Wands is, also your mental space. It's the little things that we do that are also self-care. I saw somebody recently posted like hardcore self-care and something they had done. And yeah, absolutely. It, go balls deep on your self-care. Go, balls to the walls about it, because it's the little things that matter. Whether it's, singing a prayer or song to your water, or using rose water toner, or I don't know, dipping your toothbrush in crystal water, um, whatever it is. Those are the ways in which we bless the holes before we, establish pillars um, to build in or on. Those are the foundational principles of building, and it's these very little things. And that's again this Two of Hearts too, and the ways in which we show up and show face for ourselves, um, and you know extend or reach out of ourselves, um, just for sake of growing, just for sake of seeing the idea grow rather than for gain. Um, that is a safer place of sharing. And that's perhaps something that needs to be embraced more, and more clearly, because communicating can be very very anxiety riding when you think that somebody always wants something from you. Um, and we live in a very currently entitled world, so it does feel often like somebody wants something from you. Um, and those aren't these kinds of parties. Those are parties where they're distant and sort of forced. It's like the way I hear people talk about the holiday season. They never, why are you going to this thing that you don't actually want to do? Those aren't like that. That's not these royal colors. So get out of that, because those aren't reflective scenarios or settings. Those aren't safe spaces to share. Um, and thus continues this memory of anxiety in interaction, or overthinking, or not trusting yourself in those interactions, because we hold ourselves close to the chest, for some reason or another. And again, do you remember why? Do you remember why, or when, or how, um, and what that means, and how how we can continue to move with or without it? Again, do you move because of your wounds, in spite of them, or do you move through them and beyond them? And we don't all have to be our wounds. That story gets old real fast. And at the end of the day, even that isn't where you're from. God, I thought I was done. But even that isn't where you're from. I feel like people get really attached to, like, I'm from the streets. I'm from this shit, from the school of hard knocks. And yes, 100% rock that, love it, same, true. Um, but also, that was not the will of that story. Like, in that tragedy, you are the main character, or protagonist, or hero, perhaps. Um, Hero, villain, whatever. Um, in that tragedy. But what drives those stories is the testament to will, and ultimately becomes a very empowering story because of that, and that is what we can focus on. Because same, true, been through it. I in many ways am who I am because of it, and continue to be badass in hard times because of it. Uh, but also not only because of it. Uh, the things that drove that was love and passion, and resilience of will, and inspiration, um, and and the need for freedom and liberation of trauma, of abuse, of many things. Um, Gosh, that's a lot to unpack. That's a lot to unpack. Oh, what's up? Thanks. Oh, that's so funny. Gosh, some people really can't focus. Um, why not? We'll do one. We'll do one of these bad boys. Where can we look for these kinds of relationships? Uh, Much like you're breathing with me, dear friend. Um, and opening up ourselves up to this possibility, with all of this heart energy and all of this mind energy, um, and with the head nod to cultivating presence in the small things. Pay attention to your breath. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and at the very least, align yourself with the present moment. You don't have to tap into the moon. You don't have to tap into the stars. You don't have to tap into anything. Um, Everything else is tapped into you. Um, and those are the ways in which we can unite our heart. We can unite the mind. We can, create equilibrium between our mental capacity and our emotional capacity, our cerebral intelligence and our emotional intelligence. And in something as small as conscientiousness of the breath is the ways in which we, again, uh, bless tobacco, bless the ground, or bless tobacco in a hole before we plant a seed. Um, the ways we wipe our shoes, even, like the non-spiritual vision of that. The ways you, like, when you tap your shoes before you get in somebody's car, or you wipe your feet before you walk into somebody's house. That, like, those are little things, little respects, little gestures of kindness and of dignity and of integrity. Um, Little things like that. Little things like your breath. So, knowing that, take 3 deep breaths with me and be present with you. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. I get the feeling that I know why people don't do that, and it is because they feel like something's coming at them the second that they do. It's like the adult version of closing your eyes and being afraid of the dark. Um, it's the adult version of being afraid of the dark, where you close your eyes and, like, suddenly all your thoughts are attacking you and, coming at you like headlights, like a head-on collision. And that is in part because we resist it. It is in part because we tense up at the notion, because it is different, because it is unlike. Perhaps part of that is because we're not used to paying attention. And that shouldn't be the alarming, the paying attention shouldn't be the alarming thing. The fact that that is alarming should be the alarming thing. And our attention span is just getting worse and worse. Uh, and they'll never legislate against the internet, or internet or anything like that. Um, God, I understand, I do, but the light, the lights that I saw coming at me, full speed, like a head-on collision, were also, like, white. Um, and I feel like it's like a misnomer, like a miscommunication. It's a misunderstanding. Um, what if it wasn't lights coming at you? What if it was, like, like surrounding you, like the way that the sky lights up when the sun rises? Um, and if you had a very pigeonholed point of view, perhaps the sunrise would look like too intense, like head-on collision in that way. And so we have to allow our vision or our line of sight or our thought of potentiality and possibility to expand a little bit, to breathe just a little bit. In the same way your body widens, um, allow the perception to widen so that you can see a sunrise and not a head-on collision. Ha! Yup. Yup. Ten of Swords and the Magician. The Magician does exactly what I just said to turn this Ten of Swords into something better. The Ten of Swords is both the head-on collision and the sunrise, all in the same, and it can be whatever you make of it. Um, the same thing is true of cerebral spinal fluid that moves up and down your spine multiple times a day at a very rapid rate. Um, and will also leak out of your ears or nose if you're sick. Um, Wild thing. And certain kind of sicknesses, it's a wild pain. But there's some theories that this is what Kundalini is. Yes. Um, I don't know if that's a theory. I think that's actually exactly what it is. Um, some would say this is what Kundalini is. Um, I have seen it in meditations, very much as like going down the autobahn and just like, I don't know, like the most freeing feeling of just like driving full speed ahead in like the sickest car. Um, and it was in a Reiki healing, and I remember looking in the rear view mirror and seeing the sun and the moon almost like back to back, like on a loop. Um, and I remember thinking like it was chasing me. And this fly comes out and grabs my face and looks me in the eye. And I've had visions with flies often. Uh, and they're very fascinating creatures. Um, I I think it is a very I think it's a shame that they have such a negative connotation, especially in tarot and with the devil card. Um, because they're very fascinating creatures, and there's great symbolism to them. Um, but there's also interesting, strange facts. And because they have, what is it, compound eyesight, they see in slow motion, and they can essentially see, they can dodge us. Why it's so hard to swat a fly is because they can see us moving and going to swat them before it actually happens, because they're seeing in slow motion. So they're kind of seeing in and out or outside of time, which is again why it's irrelevant, because the color spectrum and the way any being um, understands time or perceives the world around them uh, is all very relative. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, speeding down the autobahn. Um, and it was very much all of the present. Like it was all the present moment. It was like so fast that it also felt slow. And that happens to me sometimes in dreams, where it's just everything moves so fast that it feels slow and like filling or like bloating even. um, Strange feeling. But this is the intensity with which our energy moves and transcends. This is how fast information is moving in and out of and up and down the body. How fast memories and emotional intensity, and blood flow. All of these intricate uh, dances within the body that are occurring on very subtle in very subtle ways. Uh, that have great impacts, much like any aspect of your autonomic nervous system, like the breath. And uh, though it is an automatic part, like blinking, um, when we can participate in this automatic part of our computational uh, uh, qualities, um, mechanisms, uh, then I think we begin to take over in the driver's seat. We begin to look forward on that road. We begin to really calibrate our speed and not be driving in the rear view mirror. Um, and yes, that is a metaphor from my Reiki session, but it 100% relates. And it is also a very literal quality. Um, Even in literally driving fast, you have to account for, and you are kind of looking outside of time to account for how long it would take you to stop, or the distance that you need to be able to make that stop. Um, and when we have Ten of Swords intensity, we lose sight of those things. We lose sight of the present moment. We lose sight of time as it is, and we just kind of get erratic. That is a magician losing control of their power. That is a magician losing their elements being very scattered, um, or combustion even of their power, um, rather than a direction. And we don't want that. We want the opposites. But I already gave you quite a few ways to do that. And don't worry, there will be more. There will always be more. Um, oh, I love all of these comments. So funny. So funny. But yeah, focus on your breath. Align that brain. Get back in the driver's seat, because you are not the only one thinking or dreaming for you. And good luck with the moon and the solar eclipse and all of that jazz. Uh, Enjoy time and space as it is. And until next time, party on.